The California sun beat down on the bustling streets of Los Angeles, its golden rays glinting off sleek car hoods and towering skyscrapers. Among the sea of faces, one stood out: Robert Downey Jr., his charismatic presence unmistakable even in casual attire. His weathered leather jacket and comfortable jeans belied his status as one of Hollywood's most beloved actors. With a spring in his step and a twinkle in his eye, Robert navigated the familiar streets, exchanging warm greetings with fans and locals alike. His destination, a high-end car dealership nestled in the heart of the city. Unbeknownst to him, this ordinary day was about to take an extraordinary turn. As he approached the dealership, its glass facade gleaming in the sunlight, Robert's mind wandered to the purpose of his visit. For months, he'd been searching for something special, a rare classic car he could restore and use for a noble cause. It was more than just a purchase, it was a mission. The actor paused for a moment, his hand resting on the dealership's door handle. Little did he know that behind these doors lay not just a car, but a catalyst for change that would ripple through society. With a deep breath and a determined smile, Robert pushed open the door, stepping into a world where appearances often deceived and true character was about to be put to the test. The dealership's interior was a stark contrast to the bustling street outside. Polished floors reflected the immaculate finishes of luxury vehicles, while the air hung heavy with the scent of new leather and ambition. Sharply dressed salespeople flitted between equally well-heeled clients, their hushed conversations punctuated by the occasional rev of a high-performance engine. Amidst this tableau of opulence, Robert's unassuming presence went largely unnoticed. A few curious glances and whispers followed him as he made his way through the showroom, but he paid them no mind. His attention was captivated by a sleek, rare model tucked away in the back, a true gem among the already impressive collection. As Robert approached the car, a salesman engrossed in his phone barely lifted his gaze. "Excuse me, could you tell me more about this model?" Robert inquired politely. The salesman's disinterested response was curt. "Wait a moment, I'll call someone else." He walked away without a second glance, leaving Robert standing alone. The atmosphere around Robert seemed to shift, becoming more hostile with each passing moment. Whispers from the staff carried judgmental undertones. "Does he know where he is?" one murmured. "Doesn't look like he's buying anything here," another replied. Robert heard it all but chose to ignore it, his expression betraying only a hint of disapproval. As Robert continued to admire the car's sleek lines and impeccable paintwork, he sensed a presence approaching. Looking up, he found himself face to face with Richard, the dealership manager. Richard's posture was rigid, his gaze appraising as he sized up the actor before him. "This model is exclusive, very rare," Richard stated, his tone bordering on challenging. Robert, maintaining his composure, replied simply, "Exactly what I'm looking for." The manager's eyes narrowed as he took in Robert's casual attire, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "I hope you're prepared," Richard continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "This car isn't for just anyone." Robert merely smiled softly, holding the manager's gaze steadily. Undeterred, Richard pressed on. "Do you have any idea of the price? It costs more than many Beverly Hills mansions." "Yes, and I'm still interested," Robert responded, attempting to diffuse the hostility. Richard let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. "Models like this attract a certain type of client, people who truly understand what they're buying. And, with all due respect, you don't seem to fit the profile." Robert tilted his head slightly, his eyes never leaving Richard's. "It's interesting how you can know so much about people just by their clothes. That says more about you than it does about me," he replied, his trademark refined irony evident in his tone. Richard, visibly irritated, took a step forward. "Look, I see people like you all the time," the manager snapped. "They come in here, look at the cars, dream a little, and leave without spending a cent. If you're here to play make-believe, I ask that you don't waste my time." Robert maintained his serene expression, but his posture became more resolute. "And what if I'm not dreaming?" Robert asked simply. Richard let out a mocking laugh, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Then I'd say you're in the wrong place," he retorted, his voice laced with derision. The tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Robert's calm demeanor seemed to further agitate Richard. The manager's face flushed with anger, his composure slipping away like sand through an hourglass. It was clear that this confrontation was reaching a boiling point, and the next few moments would determine the course of events to come. The showroom had fallen silent, all eyes now fixed on the unfolding drama between Robert and Richard. The other customers and staff members watched with a mix of curiosity and unease, sensing that something momentous was about to occur. In the corner, a young bystander discreetly pulled out his phone, capturing the scene on video. Richard, now visibly seething, took another step towards Robert. His voice rose, echoing through the quiet showroom. "I've had enough of this charade. It's time for you to leave." The manager's hand shot out, aiming to push Robert towards the exit. But the actor, drawing on the reflexes honed through years of superhero roles, smoothly intercepted the aggressive move. With a firm yet non-violent grip, Robert held Richard's arm, effectively neutralizing the threat without escalation. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, the tension so thick it was almost tangible. Robert's eyes, usually twinkling with mirth, now held a steely resolve. "I don't think that's necessary," he said quietly, his voice carrying easily in the hushed showroom. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, like a dam breaking, chaos erupted. Phones were whipped out, cameras flashing as people realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. Richard, his face a mask of shock and embarrassment, stumbled backward. The video of the incident, captured by the young bystander, was already making its way onto social media, about to ignite a firestorm of public outrage. As the commotion in the showroom reached a fever pitch, a well-dressed woman pushed her way through the crowd. Her eyes widened as she recognized Robert, and she quickly stepped between him and the still fuming Richard. "Mr. Downey, I am so sorry for this misunderstanding. I'm Sarah, the owner of this dealership." Robert's posture relaxed slightly, but his eyes remained fixed on Richard. "There's no misunderstanding here, Sarah. Your manager made his stance quite clear." His voice was calm, but carried an undercurrent of steel. Sarah turned to Richard, her face a mixture of shock and disappointment. "Richard, do you have any idea who this is?" The color drained from Richard's face as realization dawned. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The whispers in the room grew louder, and Robert could hear his name being passed from person to person. The secret was out. The man in the leather jacket and jeans was none other than Hollywood royalty. Sarah turned back to Robert, her voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Downey, please allow me to make this right. We value all our customers, regardless of their appearance or status." But Robert held up a hand, silencing her. "That's exactly the problem, isn't it?" he said, his voice carrying through the hushed room. "Respect shouldn't be reserved only for those you deem worthy." As Robert's words hung in the air, a palpable shift occurred in the atmosphere of the showroom. The other customers, who had been silent spectators until now, began to murmur in agreement. Some even stepped forward, sharing their own experiences of judgment and discrimination in high-end establishments. Richard, still reeling from the revelation, attempted to backpedal. "Mr. Downey, I didn't realize. Of course, we'd be honored to have you as a customer. Perhaps we could discuss a special deal." His voice was desperate, a far cry from the arrogant tone he had used earlier. But Robert's expression remained unchanged, his disappointment evident. "A special deal?" Robert repeated, his voice tinged with irony. "So now that you know who I am, I'm suddenly worthy of your respect and attention." He looked around the room, addressing not just Richard, but everyone present. "But what about all the other customers you've dismissed? the ones who don't have fame or fortune to fall back on. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah, the owner, looked stricken, while Richard seemed to shrink under the weight of Robert's words. The actor's gaze swept across the room, meeting the eyes of the other customers who had shared their stories. In that moment, it was clear that this incident had transcended a simple misunderstanding. It had become a catalyst for change. Within hours of the incident, the video captured by the young bystander had gone viral. Social media platforms were ablaze with discussions, the hashtag #JayaRespectForAll trending worldwide. People from all walks of life shared their own experiences of being judged based on appearances, creating a global conversation about respect and inclusivity. The luxury car dealership found itself at the center of a PR nightmare. Calls for boycotts flooded their social media channels, and their once stellar reputation was in tatters. Sarah, the owner, issued a public apology, promising sweeping changes in their customer service policies. Richard, unsurprisingly, was let go, his actions deemed unacceptable in light of the company's new stance. Robert, true to his nature, remained largely silent on the matter. He declined interviews and avoided making public statements, allowing the incident to speak for itself. However, his actions in the following days spoke volumes. He was spotted visiting smaller, more modest car dealerships, engaging with salespeople and fellow customers with his characteristic warmth and respect. As the days passed, the incident sparked a broader movement. Companies across various industries began to reassess their customer service practices, emphasizing respect and inclusivity. Training programs were revamped, and many businesses made public commitments to treat all customers with equal dignity, regardless of their appearance or perceived status. A week after the incident, Robert received an unexpected call. It was from Sam, the owner of a small family-run car dealership on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Sam had seen the viral video and was deeply moved by Robert's stand against discrimination. He invited the actor to visit his dealership, promising a different kind of experience. Intrigued, Robert accepted the invitation. As he pulled up to Sam's modest showroom, he was struck by the contrast to the luxury dealership. The cars on display were a mix of new and used models, ranging from practical family vehicles to a few classic cars. Sam greeted Robert with a warm handshake and a genuine smile. "Welcome, Mr. Downey," Sam said, his eyes twinkling. "How can I help you today?" Robert, touched by the simple, respectful greeting, replied, "I'm looking for something special, something with meaning." Sam nodded thoughtfully, leading Robert through the showroom. As they walked, Sam shared stories about each car, focusing not on their price tags, but on the joy they had brought to previous owners. In a corner of the showroom, Robert's eyes fell on a vintage car, its paint slightly faded, but its lines still elegant. Sam noticed his interest and smiled. "That one has quite a history," he began, launching into a tale of the car's previous adventures. As Robert listened, he realized he had found not just the car he was looking for, but also a reminder of what truly mattered in life. Back at the luxury dealership, the aftermath of the incident continued to unfold. Sarah, the owner, had been doing a lot of soul-searching since Robert's visit. She realized that the culture of elitism and judgment had been deeply ingrained in her business, and she was determined to change it. In a bold move, Sarah reached out to Sam, the owner of the small dealership Robert had visited. She proposed a partnership, an exchange program where her staff could learn from Sam's approach to customer service, and in return, she would help Sam expand his business. It was a risky move, but Sarah knew it was necessary for genuine change. The announcement of this partnership sent shockwaves through the luxury car industry. Many criticized Sarah for lowering her standards, but others praised her for taking concrete steps towards inclusivity. As the program began, Sarah's employees were initially skeptical, but they soon found themselves transformed by the experience. Richard, the former manager, watched these developments from afar. At first, he scoffed at the changes, convinced that catering to a lower-class clientele would ruin the business. But as he saw the positive response from customers and the media, doubt began to creep into his mind. For the first time, he started to question the beliefs that had guided his career for so long. As weeks passed, the effects of Robert's stand continued to ripple through society. The incident had sparked a national conversation about respect and inclusivity in customer service. Companies across various industries were re-evaluating their practices, and stories of positive changes flooded social media. Richard, the former manager, found himself at a crossroads. Unemployed and shunned by his former colleagues, he was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. One day, driven by a mix of curiosity and desperation, he decided to visit Sam's dealership incognito. As Richard walked through the doors of the modest showroom, he was struck by the warm atmosphere. He watched as Sam and his team interacted with customers of all backgrounds, treating each one with genuine respect and attention. The contrast to his own past behavior was stark and undeniable. A young salesperson approached Richard, greeting him with a friendly smile. "Welcome! How can I help you today?" The simple kindness in her voice hit Richard like a physical force. For the first time, he truly understood the impact of his past actions, and the weight of his mistakes came crashing down upon him. Overwhelmed by emotion, Richard revealed his identity to the young salesperson. To his surprise, instead of anger or rejection, he was met with compassion. The salesperson called Sam over, and soon Richard found himself pouring out his story, admitting his faults and expressing his desire to change. Sam listened patiently, his expression thoughtful. When Richard finished speaking, Sam said, "The first step towards change is acknowledging our mistakes. What matters now is what you choose to do next." These words, free from judgment or condemnation, opened a door Richard hadn't known existed. With Sam's guidance, Richard drafted a public apology. It was raw, honest, and deeply personal. He acknowledged the harm his actions had caused and committed to becoming an advocate for respect and inclusivity in customer service. The apology video posted online quickly went viral. The public reaction was mixed. Some praised Richard for his honesty and willingness to change, while others remained skeptical. But for Richard, the most important thing was that he had taken the first step on a new path. He knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but he was determined to see it through. Months after the incident, Robert Downey Jr. stood on a stage, addressing a diverse crowd of business leaders, activists, and ordinary citizens. The event was the culmination of a nationwide campaign for respect and inclusivity in customer service, inspired by the incident at the car dealership. "What happened that day wasn't about me," Robert began, his voice carrying across the hushed auditorium. "It was about a fundamental truth we sometimes forget, that every person, regardless of their appearance or status, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect." The audience nodded in agreement, many wiping away tears. Robert went on to share stories of positive changes that had occurred since the incident. Businesses, large and small, had implemented new training programs, focusing on empathy and inclusivity. Customer satisfaction rates were up across various industries, and employees reported feeling more fulfilled in their roles. As he concluded his speech, Robert's voice took on a note of challenge. "But our work isn't done," he said. "This isn't just about customer service, it's about how we treat each other in every aspect of our lives. Will you join me in making respect and inclusivity not just a policy, but a way of life?" In a surprising turn of events, Richard, the former manager, had become one of the movement's most passionate advocates. He traveled the country, sharing his story of transformation and encouraging others to examine their own biases. His journey from antagonist to ally became a powerful symbol of the change that was possible. As the movement grew, Robert found himself reflecting on the unexpected impact of that day at the dealership. What had started as a simple car shopping trip had sparked a revolution of kindness. He realized that sometimes the most profound changes come from the most ordinary moments. The story of respect and inclusivity continued to unfold, touching lives in ways both big and small. And as Robert watched this new chapter of social change begin, he felt a sense of hope for the future. A future where every person would be valued for who they were, not what they appeared to be.